Okay, I'm here to talk about the question of why do I hang out on prediction sites and trade prediction futures? Okay, I grew up in the Bible Belt and I saw a lot of people around me getting seriously taken for a ride by people I consider at best false prophets and at worst are among my top candidates for demonic possession, if such a thing actually exists. When I grew a little older and I looked into it, I found there actually was a literature on forecasting methods, some of which were, had actually had numbers to back them up. And what I saw is that hard forecasting methods is one of those ideas that has broad appeal across both the right and the left, and it never quite goes away, but it never quite catches on either. And it's also a very politically volatile area. For example, there was a Delphi study at University of Illinois that got shut down by the Nixon administration for political reasons. They forecast the Nixon resignation shortly after Watergate. And this got federal funding pulled for political reasons, which isn't the first time that Tricky Dicky did something like that. But the, when I looked further into the academic literature, the first two things I found were something called the Delphi Method, which is a form of iterative voting for do forecasting pioneered at Rand Corporation in Los Angeles. The link to that, the Wikipedia on that article is posted to the comment section below. And then there was an attempt to fix Soviet-style economic planning by a man named Stafford Beer. Stafford Beer is a giant of operations research. A lot of his work is done and is used now in major corporations, and he was hired by the Allende regime in Chile to help them with their economic planning process. And he used some forecasting methods similar to the Delphi method as part of that to guide that. And the CIA got spooked enough that that was something that helped propel their overthrow of the Allende regime, among other things. I mean, they were not exactly enamored with Allende from the start. And then, so the idea kind of went away among the leftists as they were licking their wounds after the collapse of Soviet-style economic planning. Not very many people on the left really followed up on it after that. But then you started to see people like Robin Hanson, who's a libertarian professor at George Mason University, start to pick up on the general idea, again, without a lot of support from his colleagues. He's kind of a lone voice in the wilderness. And I know Robin, I like his work, I have respect for his work, but I haven't, it has not had, I think, anywhere near the respect or recognition that he deserves. Now, later on, I saw some pretty cohesive corporate and social groups that fell into error mode or groupthink. And when I studied some of these methods at the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon, we were taught the Delphi method as a means to contain groupthink in an organization. And again, I haven't seen this get anywhere near the attention that it deserves in the organization theory literature, but it's at least there. Okay, it's not like it's something that's particularly a fringe idea. But I've seen companies that literally fell into error mode and made very bad decisions that evaporated a lot of shareholder equity because of what I consider to be groupthink. And I've included a link below to the Wikipedia article on that, so you can read a little bit more on that. Now, I worked in the insurance business for a number of years. I found that at its core, the insurance business operates things very much like prediction markets. Those are the Lloyds syndicates, and there's a link below that explains that. And the people at Lloyds may differ with me on that, but my interpretation is that this is kind of a low throughput prediction market with qualified investors participating. They don't just let anybody put their money down on this. And there may actually be some real reasons for that. We've seen political prediction markets, for example, that apparently were manipulated by political campaigns. There was a website InTrade that was trading some pretty high volume prediction markets. And we saw at times stuff that really looked like political campaigns skewing the odds so that they could create a perception that they were a stronger campaign than they really were. So I can understand why Lloyds might qualify investors for this. Now, in the famous self-help book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he talks about creating a mastermind group of trusted business advisors, and I think that some of these methods may be useful for that. I think that a mastermind group of people that were versed in this literature might be more powerful and help each other more than they might otherwise. Uh, so I think these methods might be applicable for that purpose. I'd love to hear from folks who share this interest and find this at all inspiring. This has been something I've been pretty passionate about for a while, and I'd like to find some other folks that share my passion around it, because I haven't found them so far. Uh, my two favorite sites right now are predictit.org and metaculus.com. Predictit.org is a political and economic indicator prediction market that operates out of New Zealand. It's owned by a consortium of academic institutions. They're kind of restricted in what you can bet on there. And so it's pretty comes down to political markets largely in the United States, but some international markets. And that is an active site. And then there's metaculus.com. Now, Metaculus, it has two big advantages. One, it's more accessible, and because there is not betting going on, it's not restricted by gambling laws. So it can operate freely in the US. The only money involved there is prize money, and which is fairly small, but there are they do have contests to attract attention. Like somebody wants to get a forecast on some subject or another, and they will put up $1,000 to $2,000 in prize money. That'll be divided up among the top participants. I did get a sweatshirt and an epidemiology prize for predicting COVID-19 trends. But that's my only financial connection to that site. And I'm not a shareholder I'm not an employer shareholder of Metaculus. I like it because I think it teaches good probability habits and ways to model the future. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and you can read my suggestions for enhancement in their comment section on the site to see more what I have to say on that. But I think it's really nice for being accessible and for teaching people about how to think probabilistically about the future in an easy way. And the other big advantage is that you can submit questions. Now, each question on Metaculus is a lot of work, and it does really take some work to put one up. I've put about 50 questions up there, and I feel, and I'm grateful that I've had that chance to do that. And it, for example, has helped me to understand the COVID-19 epidemic in terms of my own personal planning much better than I think I would have otherwise. Predictit.org is a real money market. I do not recommend it as an investment. There are people there that make their living trading election futures. I've talked to a couple of them. They're very few. It's the same principle as beating any financial market. It's a very rare thing that people can do it. Fewer than 1% of people can actually get money ahead, I think. I have beat the market there during election season, but it's only by a very, very small margin, and I found the experience very humbling. But I don't regret it. I have a portfolio there less than $200, and like I say, do not put money there that you don't think that you can lose. At the same time, I think I really have gotten value for the money I've put on there. So I do recommend it as an experience if you can afford it. If you can afford to, the way I recommend you do it is you take like $100 if you can afford it and make a lot of small bets. If you make one bet, you are gambling and you're not going to learn anything. You're going to learn something if you make 50 to 100 bets, and then you'll learn something about your level of skill, which I think will be valuable to learn. Now, some of the things that I've gotten out of trading prediction markets and my Metaculus site. Such sites give me more accurate news than I can get through any news outlet. The book Super Forecasting describes this. Basically, most corporate news pundits are frauds. In fact, the overwhelming majority of them do not have any predictive ability that they could establish at all. And the markets give at least some indication of what is going to happen. They are limited in accuracy, say, to 4 to 5 years out. The overall predictive track record is a bit less than a CIA analyst, but it's a lot less costly. That's, again, described in the book Super Forecasting, which I will put a link to below. I pay close attention to information sources suggested by those who have a better predictive track record than I do. I listen to those people very seriously because I want to improve my predictive track record and learn to think more clearly about things. And this is one of the better methods I've learned for doing that. Major investment books like The Intelligent Investor by Warren Buffett's mentor, Ben Graham, and Principles by Ray Dalio strongly suggest that learning to identify one's areas of competency and one's blind spots is extremely valuable in becoming a better investor. And I think that these sites may give you a clue on how to do that before you start throwing money around in real financial markets, which I highly recommend. And I would say that if you can't recommend that doing index investing may be a better bet, or index investing with a few hedges like gold might be a better bet for people than for the average person. And again, this is a humbling experience. And I say that as somebody who has beat the market by a small amount, but I found it to be, I went in with an illusion that I had better predictive accuracy than I did. And I found that I wasn't bad according to the metrics of Metaculus, which I'll post publicly in my profile there so people can see what I'm about and what my predictive track record has been. And I'm not bad. But I had to really work at it, and I found that there are people that are better than I am, and I might pay to listen to them. And I consider that to be a valuable piece of information. I also find the influence of watching prediction markets and forecasting sites and prediction markets calming, almost like a meditation. Corporate news is not, they're not paid to inform you. They're paid to sell advertising. And a big part of that is to play on your emotions with what amounts to fear porn, because that is something that helps advertisers achieve their objectives. But it doesn't achieve your objective of being better informed or being in a better frame of mind. You're actually really better off without it. And the markets, by comparison, are somewhat calming. Now, is the news there all good? No, there are some if you look at my Metaculus profile, look at some of the questions, there are some very disturbing trends, particularly in the US today. The US is likely to be headed towards political instability, but it's also not likely to be happening today or tomorrow. You have time to plan and prepare yourself. And that's one of the important messages here. And I also there's also not an indication that it's going to be an instant global catastrophe either from there. And, there are going to be pockets of stability, or that's the indication, at least the 3 to 4 year indication, and you can plan on that. And I can't beat it, so I tend to take the markets as a serious indicator. I don't think it's a good indicator for more than 4 or 5 years out, but it at least gives me something to remove, sense of immediate urgency, and keeps me from getting into a conspiratorial mindset. I have the theory that this can help one become a better investor. I have not proven that. I am interested in integrating this into things like financial trading. I haven't done that yet. I think it can be done, but that's really a theoretical speculation. Now, the downside. Again, as I pointed out ahead of time, predicted fees are way too high, and the house keeps the float. And I think they're actually shooting themselves in the groin with their fee structure and the way they structure these things. There's another prediction site, longbets.org, and they don't do trading, but they do long-term bets, and people trade in terms of a mutual fund, which I think is a much better way of structuring long-term bets than any conventional currency. But that's not the way they're doing it on Predictit yet. And I think that we're years away from anybody doing longer term prediction markets on what I consider to be a sound basis. And I hope that happens, but it hasn't happened yet. And I think that would be a real step forward in terms of the state of the art when it happens. And the community around these methods is still a little limited. That's actually one of my motivations for talking about it here is I want to find people that share this interest in and the passion that I have here. And what I've also found is that I get more deeply involved in this, is that many people around me, they will talk about the future, but they're really not interested in accurate prediction. They are really more accurate in fitting into one social group or another. I mean, that's like, for example, why I think that we had so many people saying that Donald Trump was going to win, even when every major polling agency and the prediction markets were saying that in 2020 that he was unlikely to win. And I say that as somebody that bought Donald Trump futures in February of 2016. That year, there were indications, to me at least, that he had a good chance of winning, and I made money. That's part of what helped me beat the market on PredictIt was my bets on Donald Trump that were done early on. So, and it's not that I'm a Donald Trump fan. I can discuss elsewhere how I feel about the man, but I saw him as a serious political contender early on, and it turned out I was correct. Okay, but many people, when they discuss the future, they're not really interested in preparing or what's going to happen. They're really motivated to fit in with some social group or another. And as you get into this, you'll discover how shallow and empty a lot of those connections really are. And it is a bit of a problem. And it's something I do have to warn people on this as they move forward, that this is a limitation here. And you're probably best off not talking too much about your interest in this to certain people, or not too much. You got to kind of let people go at their own pace. So this is part of what I wanted to say about why I trade prediction markets and the value that I've gotten from this. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it. Please write me a comment, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. And this is Randall Burns, as the world burns, signing off for now.